What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with DFS, bringing you a brand new video. Today's video is on the Christmas 3-game slate today. Hope everyone has a good Christmas. We get some hopefully good football, especially tonight's game to end it off with Baltimore and San Francisco. Should be in my opinion, a Super Bowl matchup. Um, but yeah, it's 3-game slate. Kansas City, Vegas starting it off. There is, fortunately for us, one of the big key injuries going into the slate that we're looking at is Josh Jacobs against Kansas City. Very questionable, limited in practice. He's If he's out, Zamir White is in, so we kind of get that information early. Other than that, there's not really anybody else. Zay Flowers tonight is an option, but at that point, you could pay down to Odell. Nothing on tight end. We already know that information, so that information is good. But some feedback I got from somebody that I'm going to share to you guys from this point going on into next season is going over kind of my main line of what I went with and show you guys what I did. So my main line did cash in double ups and definitely in tournaments. Was this went with Justin Fields as quarterback, 48% owned. A lot of people went Nick Mullins. I went the Justin Fields route, and it paid off. I did end up paying down for Ken Walker. I kind of did and it backfired. If I would have went the other way, this lineup would have been even that much better, but it is what it is. That's stuff we learned from. But I wanted some Seattle exposure. So it was either Ken Walker and Roshan Johnson, or it was Bijan and Khalil Herbert. And as you guys, if you guys saw yesterday, that I went the wrong way, right? If I went Bijan, I get like an extra 10 points out of here. If I went Roshan, I get an extra 14. So an extra 24 points in this lineup that I ended up picking the wrong side of. Is what it is, still cashed. But, it just is what it is. But then I did go the Breece Hall route. Definitely paid off 43 points. Was very close to a double 100-yard bonus too, and that would have been just absolutely crazy. Justin Jefferson, 29 points, one of the top players as well. Josh Downs, surprisingly, was low owned. Didn't do exactly what I expected out of him, but it is what it is. Wicks had in the lineup, 55% owned. Thankfully got the touchdown before getting injured. So he paid off there. Went Njoku over McBride. That one paid off as well. And then Tampa Bay defense, I believe, was the highest scoring defense on the slate. So that one paid off too. So overall, a good way on Christmas Eve, and looking forward to going to Christmas now. So let's get into this slate. So quarterbacks, I think to me, it's pretty clear of who I'm going with personally. Jalen Hurts against the Giants at 7,600. He's still not priced as well as I thought he'd be for a guy that's putting up 20 to 30 points. He should be in the 8K range. But I guess that game against Dallas is worrisome, and how Philly's played. They're on a losing streak right now. A lot of close games out of them. So they've lost 3, but barely get out of Buffalo. Barely get out of Kansas City. Even against, like, a lot of these games are close for Philly. This game I don't think is going to be close. I think Philly's going to blow them out, and that's just my opinion on it. But I really like him at 7,600. I like Patrick Mahomes tonight as well, or today, I should say. Today against Vegas. Patrick Mahomes statistically having the worst season he's had in his career. You look at his high upside this season, only one game above 30 fantasy points. You go back and look at week 12 against Vegas, still puts up 20.8, 2 touchdowns, almost 300 yards for the 300-yard bonus. If you go and look at Patrick Mahomes versus Vegas, he's got statistically just a great matchup against them. Look at his home game splits versus away game, averaging 5 more points a game at home. So, I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes. I think he's going to be my quarterback today, unless something changes. But that's the guy I'm looking at. And then you could go the route of Lamar and Brock Purdy today as well. Obviously, a high total. Both quarterbacks in tough matchups, in my opinion. but both offenses are very efficient. Obviously, Baltimore's runs through Lamar Jackson with Keaton Mitchell out. That's a huge blow to that offense, in my opinion. I think he's the most explosive running back in that running back room. Gus Edwards is just a hard hitter. Justice Hill, kind of a mix, but not as explosive as Mitchell was. So that is a huge blow, in my opinion. But Baltimore's still going to run the ball. That's what they do. San Fran, look at it. They might be down both their starting defensive tackles, so that could be a huge advantage for Baltimore in that. That's something to watch for. We already know Armstead's out, but Hargrave is the other one that we're looking at. He is questionable, so Gus Edwards could be a good play then, essentially. Brock Purdy against Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore's defense is very good. They've been very good. But Brock Purdy has been very efficient. That offense has been very efficient. The pass attempts are low, but the completion percentage is very high. And the yards after catch, amazing. Getting touchdowns. 2 out of his last 3 games, 4 touchdowns. And you look at some of the opponents he's faced this year. A team like Jacksonville, they blow out 3 touchdowns. Cincinnati, 1 touchdown here, but still ends up with 24 fantasy points out of it. Dallas, 26 points. Cleveland's the only game, he's really struggled in. So, yeah, Brock Purdy's still been very efficient. And then Lamar. Lamar just always has that rushing upside. Doesn't have a good passing game, right? 171 yards and a touchdown and a pick. But with 97 yards out of the rushing, that's 9.7. That's half his fantasy points he got in that game. So he has that upside. Obviously, you get a pay down for Brock Purdy compared to Lamar, but it is still there. And then Aiden O'Connell against Kansas City. You see what he did against Kansas City, ends up at 13.9. Explosive, best game he's had this season as a rookie against the Chargers. But Kansas City's got a top 10, you could say top 5, depending. But Kansas City, really good defense. You look at Aiden O'Connell's away stats, and they're just not that good. Throwing under 200 yards, only 2 touchdowns in the 3 games. So, if you want to pay down, I'd honestly go Tommy DeVito, right? I don't like Tommy DeVito today. But for fantasy, he's getting there, right? He's getting there fantasy wise. In every game he started, he's gotten at least 10 fantasy points, and at 5,000, that's 2 times value. And you could pay up at these other expensive positions, wide receiver, running back. You could even go pay up for Kelsey or Kittle, going the DeVito route, right? This Philly secondary, they're getting Maddox back, I believe, but they're still out Roby. They're still out Slay. I think Cunningham is out as well tonight. So there's quite a few injuries to Philly. We know their defense has been shaky, but I just think Philly's defense is going to be really good tonight. So let's go into running back, though. So we have McCaffrey. McCaffrey, the best fantasy running back in the league. I'd say at this point he's the best running back in the league. I don't think that's questioned. But yeah, he's just a safety net when it comes to fantasy. Baltimore, one of the better teams in the league. Yet again, I'd say a top 5 team against the rush. But McCaffrey's just been... He's so used in their offense that it's really hard to get away from him. If you could pay up for him today, go for it. I don't think you need to necessarily, right? Obviously, it gives you that safety blanket. And you look at wide receiver. There's some kind of high prices today. But if you wanted to go McCaffrey, you could pay down at quarterback. There's an opportunity to pay down at some wide receivers. Pay down at tight end, definitely. But yeah, McCaffrey, definitely worth playing. I like Saquon tonight against Philly, right? It's not a great matchup, but Philly's been getting beat on the ground lately. You look at Saquon, he's kind of been a boomer bust in this Tommy DeVito offense. But I think he gets the receiving work tonight with how good Philly's defensive line is against how bad the Giants' offensive line is. I see quite a bit of dump offs to Saquon tonight. So at 6,800, I don't love it, but I do like Saquon tonight at his price point, especially at 6,800. That's very cheap for someone like Saquon Barkley. His potential. Isaiah Pacheco in a really good spot tonight. 6,400. My only worry is Edwards-Helaire hasn't looked terrible, right? With Jared McKinnon on the IR, it's going to be Edwards-Helaire and Pacheco. I don't necessarily like an individual in Kansas City. Like, if you could combine the Kansas City running backs, then yes, I'd love it. I'm just worried that Edwards-Helaire could get some work with Jared McKinnon out. But you've seen what Pacheco was kind of doing before he got hurt, having some really good fantasy outings, getting used in the receiving game too, which you go back and look, was used early in the season, then kind of fell off and then back again. So Isaiah Pacheco, the Kansas City running backs I like. The thing to watch for is Josh Jacobs today at 6,300. This is the one to watch for. If he's out, you get a very cheap running back in Zamir White, who it's not a great matchup, but didn't look bad against a bad defense in the Chargers. Obviously, this is a way better defense, but a running back at 5,000 today is very good. DeAndre Swift at 6,000 I really like tonight as well. You look at some of the work he's got. Hasn't been the greatest, but obviously we've seen some good defenses they face lately, in my opinion. Right? They faced Seattle's defense, which I think Seattle's defense is good. Weren't as good as I thought they'd be yesterday against the Titans, but they faced Dallas's defense, San Fran's defense, Buffalo's defense, and Kansas City's defense, and then Dallas's defense again, right? They've had 5 out of their last 6 games against top 10 defenses. So I think this is a really good bounce back game for DeAndre Swift at 6,000. I mentioned Gus Edwards, right? He could be a really good play if Hargrave is out for San Fran. Baltimore, one of the best teams running the ball, and with 2 defensive tackles out for the opposing team, becomes a really good play there. Other than that, if you want to throw in the Boston Scott 4,300 touchdown streak against the Giants, go for that as well. But I don't know if I could just justify a 1 touchdown game. But wide receivers now, A.J. Brown, I love it, 8,500 against the Giants tonight. Yet again, you look at A.J. Brown's numbers, only 1 game out of the last 6 above 20 fantasy points, but the matchups he's gotten is very tough. You look at when he's faced some of these bad defenses, right? Washington 36, Miami, whose defense is good now, but they weren't when they were facing Philly, 32. The Jets, still a really good defense, 23. Rams, 21. Washington again, 40. Like, against these bad defenses, A.J. Brown has put up good points. This is a bad defense, right? Regardless of how the Giants are playing, their bad defense. So A.J. Brown at 8,500, good play. Deebo Samuel at 7,700. I don't love tonight, right? I think with him getting included in the rushing game, he's there. He gets 2 touchdowns to pretty much get his fantasy points. At 21 last week, but the other 2 games he's been, very efficient when getting the ball. Like 4 receptions for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 yards on the ground, and another touchdown. So he's on a touchdown streak too, and that's kind of what you want in some players. It's just a very tough matchup, in my opinion, for San Francisco wide receivers. I don't necessarily love playing them. Tonight, I'd rather go in attack some of these mid to low tier prices, kind of pay up at running back, maybe pay up at tight end if you need to, pay up at quarterback. So A.J. Brown's a guy that I'm going to. Devontae Adams, I think, is in a good spot to where I like Kansas City. I made that clear tonight. So I think Vegas is going to have to pass the ball. We see a good connection out of Aiden O'Connell and Devontae Adams last week, where he gets 100 yards for the first time since week 3. He gets 100 yards, 12 targets, 8 receptions, and a touchdown. You see, as long as they're not downfield targets, right? Is what they're connecting on. It's short to medium targets. So very good secondary, Kansas City. I think he's a good run back if you like a Kansas City stack tonight, though. Devontae Smith in a really good spot as well. Obviously banged up. Didn't know if he was going to play or not, but it was cleared early on that he's going to play. Look at Devontae Smith's numbers recently. He's been hitting 10 plus points a game for quite a while now. With Dallas Goedert there, people were worried, but Devontae Smith is still producing. I like both Philly wide receivers tonight. Brandon Ayuk, right? I'd rather prefer Debo in this. I'd prefer Ayuk the last couple of weeks, and it's burnt me. But Debo just being used in the run game as well. And Brandon Ayuk really just hasn't needed to be used. So, Debo Samuel over Ayuk. Rashee Rice, 6,500, yes. Kadarius Toney out. Sky Moore on IR. Mecole Hardman on IR. So, it's Rashee Rice, Watson, MVS, Richie James, and Rashee Rice is the best out of them. Got a really good matchup tonight. Obviously, another guy that's a very touchdown upside potential, but 9 targets is the lowest he's gotten in the last 4 games. Only hit 100 yards once this season, but when he did, 27 fantasy points. This is a game where he can as well hit that mark. We'll see what it looks like, but at his price point, 6,500, I really like that at a mid-tier price wide receiver. Zay Flowers, San Fran's secondary has been their weakest point. Obviously, you look at Zay Flowers last week when getting banged up. Didn't really do much, but before then, gotten 2 straight 20-point DK point performances. And his price point at 5,500 is kind of where he's been all season in that 5K range. We've seen some high games, some low games out of him. But in a matchup like this, where if San Fran's offense does what they do, Baltimore's going to have to pass the ball, and it's going to be Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. But Zay Flowers at 5,500, I really like the price point. It's affordable today, and a good run back if you want to stack the San Fran side. Jacoby Myers, I don't like Jacoby Myers tonight. If I'm getting a Vegas receiver, it's going to be Devontae. Obviously, he still gets there. The last 2 out of 3 weeks against Kansas City, he gets 20. Chargers, 15 with that touchdown. I just don't like it tonight. I'd rather go Devontae, pay up at it. Odell, Odell isn't killing it, but I mean, the last 4 out of 6 games gotten over 10 fantasy points at 4.3. Like I said, if San Fran, one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best, efficient offenses, does what they do, Baltimore's going to have to pass the ball, and it's going to be Odell, Zay Flowers being the 2 most targeted guys. Wan'Dale at 3,900, I think is a great play tonight, right? Philly's secondary has just been bad. That's what they've done. And you see Wan'Dale is not a really high upside guy with 3 games above 10 fantasy points, but I don't really like any other New York pass catchers. Darren Waller maybe, but at his price point, you don't need a lot, right? He's a guy that you can pay down to and able to pay up for another wide receiver, pay up for a running back. And at 3,900, he allows you to do that. You don't need a lot. Yet again, I think Philly's going to have a really good game tonight. But Wan'Dale is going to be a pass catcher that's included. Juwan Jennings out. We already know that. So what that does for value, we go down to San Fran. And you're getting Ronnie Bell and Chris Connolly at 3K that you could use in tournaments. I don't recommend either in cash. Also, we go down to the Kansas City. Richie James here at 3,000 is value. I don't think Mecole Hardman's going to be good activated, but Richie James, I would imagine, gets some more snaps tonight. MBS is there at 3,100. I don't like it. Darius Slayton's an option too for the Giants at 3,400. Bateman, 3,300. He hasn't been killing it at all, but for his price point, 8 points doesn't really kill you. And it allows you to pay up. But I'm looking at Wan'Dale as probably the better value tonight. But there are some other options out there as well. And then we go to tight end. Travis Kelce. they're not producing right. They're not producing these high upside games. You see against Vegas 15.1 though. I think yet again it's another good matchup for Travis Kelce. But you get Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes for 15,000. That's cheap. You usually have to pay 16 and a half, somewhere around there for these two. You get them at 15,000 now. That is expensive, but that's a crazy stack that you could get out of those two. George Kittle against Baltimore. Baltimore plays. Tight end's good, so likely George Kittle I don't like tonight. Even though somehow San Fran ranks 14th against tight ends, and Isaiah Likely being included quite a bit, being the most consistent pass catcher for Baltimore in the last couple weeks. But I just don't like playing it against San Fran. If you want to go to Likely, his price is great at 4,200. Basically, for me, Dallas Goedert 4,700 against the Giants. Darren Waller 4,500 against Philly. Isaiah Likely you could play. I'm okay with it. I just personally won't touch it. If you can afford the Kelce Mahomes stack, go for it. But if you want a great pay down, we're looking at Austin Hooper 2,500. Stoneman tonight, right? Horstead's out. Michael Mayer's out. Austin Hooper will get a majority of the tight end snaps. It's not a good matchup. He's not had good games, right? Being split with Michael Mayer, Horstead getting in there as well. I don't love it, right? But at 2,500, what do you need him to do? 5 points, 6 points at 2,500? What do you expect out of a defense at 2,500, right? You expect your defense to just get a few points, and it allows you to pay up at other positions that are going to have that high upside. So, tight end, that's kind of where you could go. You could pay down at 2,500 to Austin Hooper, or you could pay a mid-tier price at some of these other tight ends. Defenses, Eagles, Chiefs, Baltimore, San Fran. I'm not going to target the Giants. I'm not going to target the Raiders. I don't think either of these defenses really shines. You see Vegas, 0 points against Kansas City last time they faced them. The Giants, when you play bad offenses in New England, Washington, you get some points. They get killed by the Giants. Get 8 fantasy points, but at their price point, not really worth it there. Against Green Bay. But yeah, I don't like the Giants defense. So it's Eagles, Chiefs, 49ers, Ravens, whatever you want to go to. It's defense. There's not a lot to put into. So hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. If you guys are interested in joining our Discord, the link for that will be in the description down below. And I will see you guys in the next one.